Hi, everyone, and welcome to our new podcast, Govs on the Go, the Legacy Series, which features some of the retired professors in the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the dean of the college. I'm also the host of the podcast. And today, my very first guest is an Austin Peay legend, Dr. Solie Fott. Dr. Fott, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for being the very first person. And welcome.
I have looked forward to being here.
So why don't you give everybody a life update and just kind of tell people what's going on?
Now?
Right now. What's going on?
Well, I had a pretty good night's sleep, you know. I am engaged in a subtle form of unemployment called retirement. I'm fond of saying that, but I still really have two full-time jobs. One is staying out of the hospital, and the other is staying out of jail. So that keeps me very, very busy.
Well, hopefully after today, we'll keep that track record going.
We'll see.
So there are so many facets to the life of Dr. Solie Fott, and I'm just going to read through a few of them, all right?
Okay.
Musician, educator, leader, family man, community member, art lover, and kaleidoscope collector. So where should I begin in that list?
You know, family is quite important.
I would say so. Let's begin with family.
All right.
Because you are a native Tennessean. You grew up in Chattanooga. We won't hold that against you.
Well, not only that, but I was actually born there.
You're born and raised in Chattanooga. Very good. And what I love about your story is that you told me your mother bought your first violin and arranged for you to have lessons. So why do you think that was important for her to have you do that?
I think my mother wanted her only child to be the greatest violinist in the world. It turned out that I disappointed her, but at least I started putting the violin under my chin, you know. And this really started, the occasion was my 6th birthday. And my birthday present was the violin. And as I'm fond of saying, in her other hand, my mother had a rolling pin. She intended to try to get me pretty good on the fiddle. And my first teacher was a lady who lived next door to where we were living. I never actually heard this lady play the violin. I heard her play the piano. But I was her pupil for a couple of years, you know. I remember my mother telling me that each lesson cost the family finances 25 cents. And after 2 or 3 years, I went to a teacher who could actually play the violin. So the years went by, and I went to school, and I kept taking violin lessons.
And as you progressed through the public school system,
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were advanced a few times, and so you ended up graduating high school when you were 16 years old.
Yeah, the commencement, as it usually does, occurred at the end of May or June, and I had my 16th birthday the following August.
So then you decided to continue your education, and you went to Chattanooga, which is now Tennessee Chattanooga.
Right, yeah.
And you decided to study chemistry.
Yeah, well, the first year I was a math major.
Okay.
But go figure, you know. So I turned to chemistry. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a music major right then. I was interested in some other things, but I was taking music courses all along. And by that time, by the way, I was already a member of the Musicians Union. and was already playing in the Chattanooga Symphony. There were not many young fiddle players in Chattanooga back in those days.
Right.
So I was already involved in music at a quite early age.
And so you must have determined that if you were going to keep your employment as a musician, you needed to have a day job, and so that probably directed you into the area of teaching.
Yeah, I got a BM in violin the year after the degree in chemistry. That was my fourth year. And then, as you just mentioned, I decided that I needed to think about making a living as a musician. And so I spent the fifth year at the university getting certification to teach music, which brings us to 1950.
And that's when you decided to continue your education by going to Nashville and enrolling at Peabody College.
That's right, yeah, George Peabody College for Teachers. It was sort of the Teachers College Columbia of the South. Like that institution up in the Northeast, its enrollment quintupled in the summertime because teachers came to get the graduate degrees there in the summer.
Right. And so that was the plan, to go there, become a teacher, music teacher.
Yes.
And how did your family respond to your decision to pack up and move to Nashville?
Well, you know, it's not that they were glad to get rid of me, but they certainly did not object.
Okay. Now, a very noteworthy thing happens early in your time at Peabody, and you meet a young lady named Mary Reedy.
That's right.
Yeah. Can you tell? Do you remember the first time meeting her or talking with her?
I don't remember for sure. It either had to be in the student lounge there, or maybe in the music department. She was a music major the first year that she was there. When I got there, that was her sophomore year, and she had changed to elementary education by then.
Okay.
So that's when we first started talking to each other.
And another important event happens early on in your academic career there is that you were encouraged to attend a festival by one of your professors. And at that festival, you had the opportunity to engage with a very important violin pedagogue. Can you talk about that influence on your life?
Oh, yes, I'm happy to, because that man helped me more as far as playing the violin than anyone. His name was Joseph Gingold, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he was one of the two most sought-after violin pedagogues in the country. He was also, every bit as importantly, a very, very wonderful, kind man. I can honestly say that the only really, really first-rate fiddle instruction I ever got in my life was during those 8 weeks that I was with him at Sewanee. By the way, that is a festival that is still ongoing. One of our faculty members, Megan Beridian, happens to be on the faculty. The man who started the festival was a man that not many people know about now, but back in the 1940s, he was the best-known American symphonist. His name was Roy Harris, and he had enough pull to get people like Joseph Gingold there. That same summer, the cello faculty member was the head of the cello section at the New York Philharmonic. That's also true of the man who was the viola teacher there. So Roy Harris was able to attract very good people. And Gingold was kind enough to invite me to spend a couple of days the following winter in Cleveland, Ohio, where at that time he was the concertmaster of the Cleveland Symphony under George Zell. And again, it's no exaggeration to say that the Cleveland, the symphony back in those days was ranked every bit as high as the New York or the Philadelphia orchestra. Continues to be highly thought of. I owe a lot to Joseph Gingold.
And so you're growing as a musician, you're getting your education, and things get interrupted with a stint in the Third Army.
Yes, so I get to Peabody in 1950, get my master's degree in music a year and a half afterwards. And all this time, there were people dodging bullets in Korea. And I had to decide whether to let myself be drafted or whether I should stay on and start work on a PhD. And I decided to do the latter. And that went on until August of 1953. I had done all the coursework. I had actually gotten a dissertation topic approved. And so it was time for me to let myself be drafted. And I was fortunate in that I fulfilled that obligation, which was to last and did for 24 months. Basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Did not want to get assigned to the band at that post because I heard that was not a very good situation musically, nor otherwise. But because of the weakness of my BS in chemistry, I got assigned to the medical detachment, the medical lab at Fort Jackson. That lasted for about 3 or 4 months. And then I got myself transferred to the 3rd Army Band, which was stationed in Atlanta, Georgia. So I actually fought the Battle of Atlanta for the last 18 months that I was in the Army. I missed the major engagement by about 90 years or so, you know. But I do have a war story to tell.
Okay.
Back then, Atlanta was a little different from what it is now. It only had one delicatessen. And I remember a couple of times, Leb's Deli was out of dill pickles. And that was tragic, you know. So that's my war story. I talk somewhat apologetically. Wars are nothing to be glib and silly about. I'm ready to change the subject.
Sure. Let's get back to after the Army. You come back to continue your studies. You're gonna get that PhD done, but you're also teaching in the school system there.
That's right. The first job I got as a teacher went from 1955. That's when I got out of the Army. And for 2 years, I taught beginning, string, and also band instruments in 3 different elementary schools, and also conducted the junior high school orchestra in the old Nashville public school system.
And you were also in the symphony at the time.
Yes. The reason I went to Nashville to do graduate work really was that I could play in the Nashville Symphony and earn enough money to eat.
So during that period of time, I think it's fascinating how you had the opportunity to come to Austin Peay. Can you share the story of how you found out about a job at Austin Peay?
It's February of 1958. A fellow fiddler in the symphony says, Solie, I have just gotten a year's leave of absence to start work on my doctorate. Would you take my place at Austin Peay for a year? Well, I thought that I would have to be in the Nashville area the following year. By that time, by the way, we must not forget something very important that happened to me. I got married in 1956. My wife was already a kindergarten teacher in the Nashville public school system. So when I was offered this job, my wife, Mary Reedy, knew that she could get a job anywhere teaching, you know. I thought that I would have to be around Nashville to do the final stuff in connection with the dissertation and so on. So when I was offered the job, I took it. So this was in 1958 when I got here, only to be here for 1 year.
It was a 1-year gig.
It was a 1-year gig, yes, that's right. And then, well, let's put it this way. I waited 42 years. If you run into Ed Stover, you tell him I waited long enough. And so I finally retired in the year 2000.
So he never came back for the job? And
I don't know what happened to that man. I do know he got a second-year leave of absence. I heard that he had finished his degree. I would imagine that I would have run into him in some music conference in the ensuing decades, but that didn't happen. Maybe he celebrated getting his degree by leaving the profession for something that was more remunerative.
So you come to Austin Peay, and you're a young faculty member. I also love the story that you told about President Harville calling you into his office. Could you share that? Yes,
right. And I am very proud to share it in the presence, although I'm looking the other way, of his granddaughter, Kitty, really. It was about 4 weeks after I got here that I was called into Albert Harville's office, and he says, look, I didn't know that you had actually finished your doctorate before you got here. Although I thought I would have to be around the following year, as I said, they actually pushed several of us through the PhD program the summer of 1958. So he said, well, congratulations, I want you to know something. I am raising your salary $500, and that was from $4,500 to $5,000 a year. So I have always known what my PhD is worth, $500.
Well, I think it's worth much more now than it was back then. So you were an active violinist. You were getting hired for studio work in Nashville.
Yeah, that didn't start until 1960.
Okay, because you stopped participating in the symphony.
I tell people that I've considered myself a benefactor of the Nashville Symphony since 1960. That this has nothing to do with money changing hands. In one simple act, I raised the playing level of that orchestra immeasurably. I quit, which is the most you can do for a symphony orchestra in my case.
Well, the orchestra may have done without your talents, but other people in Nashville, especially in those recording sessions, and I think that I read that it was over 2,000 different sessions that you participated in?
Yes, it was during a 20-year period. It was over 2,000 sessions, yes.
And for the likes of Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, Johnny Cash, so just the biggest in people that needed to have you and your talents. So, and I think I asked you this at one time, what person impressed you the most in terms of having vocal talent?
You know, a sound engineer can make anybody sound pretty good, but as far as a natural voice is concerned, I think that Patsy Cline really was it.
Yeah, so Patsy Cline was the person that you were most impressed with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But for the most part, you were just a hired gun. You were not somebody that went in there and became starstruck at all.
In a way, it can be said that it was a gig. It was a way to supplement a teacher's salary, which could always use supplementation, you know. But also, it was of interest. It was a change of pace from the academic world here, you know.
Right.
And over a period of time, you get to meet people, friends, and so on. What was rough is having to dodge cars on 41A before the interstate.
So just the trip down to Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that has not changed. It becomes the most challenging part of being somebody from Clarksville.
Yeah.
So while you were at Austin Peay, you were the first president of the Faculty Senate. You're also the first chairperson of the University Assembly. You're involved with the creation of the Center of Excellence in Creative Arts, CECA. 1978, your department selects you as the department chair, and you served in that role for 20 years.
You know that it's strange. It was not until 1978 that the administration here decided that not only faculty members, but perhaps department chairmen and deans should be evaluated yearly. And that was the first time that faculty members really had an opportunity to express themselves along those lines. So a couple of departments decided it was time for a change, and the music department was one of them. And my colleagues let me know that they wanted me to be chair, and that's what happened.
Did you like being chair?
Yes, because I was with people with whom I had already played school for 20 years. I got here in 58. This happened in 78. And at the end of those 20 years, we were still on speaking terms. But one very important reason that I enjoyed being chair is because the people to whom I had to report as chair of the music department, the dean of the college and the academic vice president, were people whom I respected. That doesn't mean that any time I asked for something for the music department, the answer was yes. Sometimes it was maybe, sometimes it was no. But I was always given to understand why that was the decision of the administrators. So I was very fortunate. In other words, to put it casually, it was very easy playing the role of department chair because I got along with my fellow faculty members and also enjoyed communicating with the people to whom I had to report. That's not always the case.
Right. And then after 20 years as chair, you decided that was...
The year was 2000. I was 70 years old. It was time for a change. I'm fond of saying that for years I had not been able to see the imitation wood grain on my desk because I had neat piles of papers and folders all around, and that I got to where I had lost the cleavage between the piles of papers. It was time for me to quit, yeah.
So you not only retire from the university, you put the violin away.
Oh yes.
And stop playing altogether.
That's right. Yeah, a couple of years went by, and I had a pretty good old fiddle that I had got back in the 1960s. You know, it was not a Stradivarius or Guarnerius, anything like that, but by a well-known Venetian maker of string instruments by the name of and that's interesting. Oh, Matteo Gofriller, Gofriller. His cellos fetched a lot more than the violins did, but he was quite well known. He was Venetian, Italian, and the label on my fiddle, which was an authentic label, said 1721.
Oh,
so I decided that there's no sense in that violin lying around. So there was no firm in Clarksville, nor was there one in Nashville that handled that kind of merchandise. So I left it on consignment to a firm up in New York. 3 years went by and nothing happened. Something came up. I was going to be in New York in about 10 days. I called that firm and I said, look, I know that the contract that I signed says that I must give you 30 days notice if I wanted to take the violin back and do something else with it. But I said 3 years, and I think I remember using that exactly that kind of voice, a little younger, you understand. 3 years. And they said, come on. Let me tell you the kind of salesmanship that had been ongoing. It took them 10 minutes to find that fiddle once I got to the shop in New York. I don't think that they were they were trying to sell it badly enough to suit me. Took it to a firm in Chicago. 2 more years went by. That's a total of 5 years it took me to sell my violin. And it had plenty of provenance papers and things like that, you know. I think what took so long is when people found out that they had been under Solie Fott, that fiddle had been under Solie Fott's chin for 35 years. All of the wrong notes that came out of that violin, I like to never sold that fiddle.
Well, it had plenty of good notes left in it then.
That's, I hope, for somebody. Yes.
So after retirement, you stayed connected with the Clarksville community. You served in a number of different roles within the arts. And my question is, you know, why spend your time in that way? What spoke to you about providing then your time and your talents for other organizations?
Let me say this. I have considered myself a very fortunate man. I've been able to bring the groceries home by having to do with education and with music. I am reminded of a poem. It's very short, so I can recite it. It sums up a lot for me. The poet was a Bengali by the name of Rabindranath Tagore, Tagore. He was quite well known. Actually won the Nobel Prize in literature. Was the first non-European nor American to be so honored. So here is his little poem. I slept and dreamt that life is joy. I acted and saw that life is duty. And beheld that duty is joy. When a person's duties coincide with his or her interests, that is a good life. And I consider myself fortunate along those lines. Too many people on the planet Earth hate to get out of bed in the morning and go to work. I never had to experience that.
Well, I think we'll end on that note. That's such a wonderful way. Again, thank you for being the very first guest on this podcast. We're filming today in front of Harned Hall here on Austin Peay's campus, and I feel very honored that you were our first guest.
Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers out there for checking out the podcast. We hope that you will continue to support Austin Peay and the College of Arts and Letters right here at Austin Peay. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Solie Fott. Thank you, Solie.